Okay, so the first thing that you really need to understand if you want to get better at task switching is that you cannot and you should not expect yourself to immediately drop into a narrow trench of focus or a narrow trench of ability for anything that you're not already extremely skilled at or extremely interested in knowing. Okay. One of the reasons why this is often overlooked is that, for instance, if we receive a text message from somebody and we are very interested in what's contained in that text message, maybe even eagerly anticipating the ... in that little window where the text message is going to arrive, like here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. It's an example of where you are able to immediately pay attention and absorb information. For instance, if you're trying to meet somebody in a big city and you need to know exactly where to meet them and you've arrived at the place where you thought you need to be and then you can't find them and you're waiting, where are you? And you're going to commit that information to memory and you're going to act on it. But when you sit down to read a book of unknown content, or where you have just a general sense of what the content is, or when you sit down to do something like work on a spreadsheet or your taxes or engage in a conversation with somebody, expect a 5 to 10 minute transition period. I can't emphasize this enough because I think a lot of people mistakenly think that they have issues with attention, and perhaps indeed they have clinically diagnosable attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or some other form of attention deficit disorder. Certainly can't rule that out based on this conversation alone. But a lot of people place this unfair burden on themselves to immediately be able to focus on a given task. And this is also true for physical tasks, right? If you go to the gym to work out, or you're heading out on a run or a cycling expedition, the idea that you would immediately be able to cycle at your peak performance, or that you could perform sets and reps in the gym as best as you possibly could without any warm-up, without any transition period, that you could forget about the difficult or maybe even great conversation that you were having on the way in, or that you could forget about other activities that you need to do in the rest of your day. I mean, that's just completely unfair, and it doesn't match at all the way that your neural circuits work. So you really need to match your expectation of your ability to focus on and perform a given task, whether or not it's cognitive or physical, to the actual underlying biology. Okay, so that's the first point. The second point is that we know that if you want to switch from one task to another task, that you are making it more difficult to drop into full task engagement, or rather engagement with task B following task A, if you try and go immediately from task A to task B. That even the introduction, I find this so cool, even the introduction of an arbitrary but very short transition period of, say, 15 seconds, where you know that you're introducing 15 seconds of transition and you designate it as transition, will allow you to engage in a more efficient and more complete level of task execution on task B if you introduce even a brief transition period. Now, this I find fascinating because what this means is that there are top-down influences. There are literally things that we can tell ourselves based on an understanding of the underlying mechanisms that allow us to task switch better. And this certainly doesn't involve taking any kind of prescription drug or supplement or doing anything differently, except as you go from task A to task B, knowing and designating that a transition period, even a very brief one, where you are not trying to perform task B, and that you designated this as a transition period. I'm not trying to focus on the next thing that I need to do. I might focus on it inadvertently, but I'm not deliberately trying to focus on it. Rather, I'm going to think about what I just did and the fact that I'm no longer doing that, kind of leaving it like a fog behind, all right? You're trying to move from this deep trench of attention, hopefully on task A, or maybe you didn't achieve a deep trench of attention, and you're now done with task A, and you're not placing this unfair expectation on your neural circuits to just flip to task B. And you're also acknowledging that task B is going to take 5 to 10 minutes to drop into fully. We already talked about that. But you're going to shorten that 5 to 10 minutes by deliberately introducing a transition period. And what comes in that transition period and its duration is important. So first, let's deal with the duration. How long should the transition period be?